Virtue signaling is more or less the act of proudly and unapologetically and sometimes angrily announcing to the rest of the world your discontentment with a social or political cause. And I see it in many forms. It could be in the form of an angry Facebook post, which I see a lot of these days, or it could just be in the form of taking to the streets and holding a sign above your head and screaming and chanting. And it's done purportedly to achieve some kind of positive change, when really under the surface, it just ends up making you look good, right? Because it makes you look like some kind of selfless and courageous caped crusader watching over the city from the rooftops like Batman. And it also makes those people that disagree with you feel guilty for the fact that they oppose you and feel responsible for these issues that you perceive. And then they end up apologizing to you for that. And it always feels good when somebody apologizes to us, right? But because it's so disingenuous for those reasons, there are actually a lot more consequences than you might be aware of. So we're just going to go through a few of those in this video so that if that's the type of person you are, or if you know somebody like that, then we can hopefully change people's minds for the better. So to start off, what does virtue signaling really say about you? It says a number of things. It says that you are arrogant, for one, because you're kind of putting yourself up on this moral pedestal in relation to everybody else and looking down upon them and judging them for supposedly being imperfect. And that implies that you think you've been through something so great and so arduous in life where you had to crawl through the mud to overcome that now gives you the wisdom and the fortitude and the authority to put yourself in that position. When the reality is, if you haven't fought in a war, much less served in the military or grown up in poverty or been diagnosed with a terminal illness or something actually egregious and difficult to have to live with and overcome, then you really don't have that authority and you really haven't experienced a day of pain and suffering in your life. So to those people, I would say, get off your high horse and be a little bit more humble and a little bit more respectful. It also says that you're a little hypocritical because you're pointing to somebody else and judging them from afar and saying that they're doing a bad job. And to that, I would just return the question and say, well, do you really think that you could do that much of a better job if you were in that position? And so if you've never been the president of the United States, if you've never been a police officer or the head of an organization or something like that, then you don't really have a right to be criticizing those people. So why don't you go become that, walk a mile in their shoes, and then prove that you can do a better job? And if you can't do that, or if you're not willing to, then you've kind of just contradicted yourself. So maybe be a little bit more appreciative of what these people do in your favor that you just might not be aware of because it doesn't make the headlines. And maybe be a little bit more understanding of the situation that they're in, the pressure that they face, the responsibilities that they have, and the hard work that they're doing. And finally, amongst many other things, it says that you are entitled because you're basically expecting that something just be given to you because you're yelling at somebody and kicking and screaming like a child. So if you really want to inspire positive change, then maybe take some real action and work towards earning those things instead of expecting that they be given to you and instead of just posting angry stuff on social media all the time. So maybe start an organization or start a fundraiser, run for office or work for an organization that you support. And maybe at the same time, be a little bit more grateful for those luxuries and privileges that you already do have, instead of just expecting that more be given to you all the time. Now, leaving aside what it says about you, it's also counterproductive because in throwing that childish fit that we just talked about, you're not really articulating specifically what you think the problem is, much less what you think the solution is to that problem. And just using vague generalities isn't enough. So if people don't know what you want, then they can't give it to you. So instead, maybe tone down the emotions a little bit and articulate as best you can exactly what the problem is and propose a number of different solutions that are well thought out that you can prove with some confidence will actually solve the problem that you've articulated. And maybe you'll start to get somewhere then. And on a final note, if nothing else, it's much more offensive than it is helpful towards those people you're trying to help. Because in some cases, that social cause that we talked about earlier involves people standing up and feeling like they need to protect, in quotes, this demographic of people that they feel are oppressed. But what does that imply about those people? That they are incapable of defending themselves and they're somehow incompetent, that they lack free will, or that they're just generally inferior to you. And that's very offensive. So if you really want to help people, then maybe go down to those communities that you feel are oppressed and actually ask those people what they feel they really need instead of just assuming you know what's best for them. And maybe even consider letting people speak for themselves instead of feeling like you need to swoop in and save the day and be their spokesperson. So to summarize, if you really want to inspire positive change, then don't do it in a way that's designed to make you look good and everybody else that disagrees with you look bad. Instead, focus on what you think the problem actually is and what you really need to do to solve it. And don't forget to be respectful and humble and appreciative along the way. So with that, hope that helps. Thanks for watching. See you next time.